A year ago from today, if we were to try making this recipe, I would be pretty intimidated. Today, we've got a lot of experience under our belt and I'm still pretty intimidated. Welcome back to Bourdain.
Everybody should know how to use a knife. Use everything, waste nothing.
Let's start at the beginning.
It ain't that hard, okay?
Hope you're doing well. My name is Mitch May. We're working through Anthony Bourdain's entire layout cookbook, doing every recipe for the first time. Today, we are rocking out with Roulade of Wild Pheasant. We're taking pheasant, deboning the entire thing, veal mousse, foie gras, rolling it up, sous videing it to an extent. Bourdain says be fussy, precise, and attentive to details. 3 things I am particularly good at, especially when it comes to my own shortcomings and personal flaws. I have Anthony Bourdain's book linked down below in the description of this video. Let's get moving. To begin, we're going to make our veal mousse, definitely a first for me, taking 4 ounces of lean baby cow and processing this until it's a mealy, pasty-like consistency. Once we have, quote, processed the living hell out of this, we're going to slowly add 1/4 cup of heavy cream while it is mixing on low speed. Little by little, taking our time to make sure this gets to a mousse-like consistency. Next, a little splash of white wine. Bourdain calls for port. I didn't have that on hand, so I figured we'd get away with this just for a little touch of wine flavor. Season with a little salt and white pepper. Pulse once more to get everything nice and incorporated. Now I get to reveal the part of food processors, cleaning them and scraping all the goodness out of them in the first place. Our veal mousse is prepped up and ready to go, just gonna hang out in the fridge overnight while we move on to our pheasant. We have to debone this thing, but I am not doing this alone. It's time to consult with the master, Jaques Pepin, deboning a chicken, however, closely related to a pheasant, so we can follow along to a T. After a quick review and practice the day prior with a chicken, I figure we let the man himself explain how to do this.
And now the boning out of the galantine. Usually the first thing you do, you remove the wing like that, and with those wings actually we can do lollipop, you see. First I want to remove that triangle again that we call the wishbone, so I put my knife against it. But the wishbone is that triangle which actually, even when you roast a chicken, be careful because the end is very pointed and you can puncture your finger. Right there is in the way during your carving, so it's good to remove it even when you do a turkey for that matter. Now the only thing that I want to do is to take the whole carcass out. Since I want to open it completely, I start by cutting the skin of the back. Now I look for the joint of the shoulder. Lift up the skin, put your finger there and move that chicken like that. I know there is an articulation right there, I can feel it. So I put the knife right where the articulation is and I start cutting. If I were not sure that I am into it, I would wiggle the knife a little bit and I would slide into it. So I do this side, you do the same thing on the other side. It should not take you much more than a minute to bone out a chicken. What do I do now? I grab the whole wing, put my finger through the carcass and I kind of pry it out this way, you know, until I see the little oyster. So again, do the same thing on the other side. Pull out until I see the oyster. Now what do I have? The front of the chicken. Put your 2 fingers on each side of the sternum and you pull down this way until the whole front of the carcass is clean. Put it down again. Now you grab your chicken by the leg here. Again, you cut that little oyster this way. Bring the knee higher so you can crack it open. Cut through the sinew. Pull out. Same thing on the other side. Cut the oyster, break it. What do I have now? I have the chicken, basically the whole carcass bone out, as you can see now. And what do I have here? The 2 fillets. I run my finger along. Again, no use of the knife, as you can see. That's it, along the bone, removing again that fillet. There is that long sinew into the fillet that I want to remove. What you do, the end of that sinew, you hold it, put your knife flat, and what you're going to do is just to scrape it. You see, I scrape it, and now I have that old sinew which was inside the fillet. And again, we have it here. Okay, we put that on the side. Then the fillet goes back into shape, more or less. This is done. If I want to continue boning this out, I have to take the bone of the leg. So what do? I take the end of it again and cut all around, at least to be able to grab it. But I don't cut much. I won't use much knife. I use the side of the knife. Now, you can hear it. I'm scraping the bone. That's all you do, until I am at the articulation of the knee. Now, I cut all around the articulation. Going with your knife like that, you go all around, and now that I have passed the articulation, then I start scraping again, so that you can remove that and keep this. That's for stock, of course. Again, the same thing on the other side. Remember that when you do this, in terms of technique, the techniques are the same each time. If you do duck, if you do a pheasant, if you do a chicken to saute, even to carve in the dining room, you always cut into the same place. The only thing left is the bone here. I'm holding it underneath and again here cutting all around under the articulation. Now I can stand the bone on its own and press it down like this, as you can see, and pull it out. The same thing here. I push it down and now my chicken is totally deboned. The idea there is to have the same layer of meat all over. So I'm placing this here to reorganize. If you want to have some there, you can lift up a little bit of the breast here. As I said, to have one layer of skin, one layer of meat, which you can then stuff.
I'll tell you what, I'm pretty satisfied with the first time doing this. It could be cleaner, but at the end of the day, we have a nice layer of undisturbed skin followed by meat, which is going to roll up nicely. Quick little cleanup because we made a hell of a mess, and now it's time to marinate this thing. Where I vary from Bourdain's directions, he would have you marinate the whole pheasant. I figure we debone first and then get a real nice coverage with our red wine. Followed by 2 leeks thinly sliced. We sprinkle them on top, and in the name of getting as much flavor as possible, I sprinkle them underneath the bird, making a nice little mess as well. We wrap this up from underneath to secure everything in case we get any juice flying around, save our bones as well, and these are going to hang out in the fridge overnight. Day 1 is done, now it gets even more tricky. Our pheasant has really transformed, reminding me of the coq au vin we made, how the wine has become this murky, not so appealing color. Now we have to get all of these little freaking shallot pieces off of this pheasant, which took more time than I'm willing to admit. Give it a pat down with paper towels and put these tenderloins back where nature kind of intended. Then it's not asked for, but I figure we pound this with a meat mallet not too intensely because everything is pretty well tenderized due to the marinade. Next, sprinkle pretty generously with salt and pepper, followed by our veal mousse, which Bourdain says to slather on like peanut butter and jelly. Definitely wasn't easy as peanut butter, but I took a moment just to kind of appreciate what the heck we're doing here, taking veal mousse and now adding foie gras. This is easily the most French thing I have prepared, cutting the foie gras into finger-like logs and stacking it in the middle of our pheasant roll. We then give it a kiss with some salt, not asked for, but I just felt it could help, followed by the most nerve-wracking portion, rolling this thing up. Bourdain explains, similar to a joint, you don't want it fat in the middle, you want to gently squeeze, having the skin overlap the pheasant. Now I don't know how that pertains to joints because I'm a weenie, but I think we did an okay job here. After a little maneuvering and what I can only explain as massaging areas, it turned out pretty uniform and cohesively bonded. Now we're going to slip some butcher string and then giving it a nice knot, 3 to 4 areas of this roulade. Next we take plastic wrap and rolling this similar to the method of the pheasant, overlapping the plastic, applying pressure after each roll. This allows us to really ensure the roll is nice and uniform in length and width. Giving the ends of the plastic wrap alternating twists, followed by a few big pulls toward ourselves, we tie off the ends of plastic wrap with string, which took some time. I'm gonna save you the time. It was kind of a bitch. Now it's time for us to do a makeshift sous vide, if you will. Bourdain would have us boil water and then cover it and cool it. I figure we try to settle at a nice 170. With our burner pretty low, I put a spoon under this roulade just so it's not in complete contact with the heat. We cover this and it is going to cook for 2 hours. Bourdain says the hard part is now over. Don't mind if I have a little wine, spilling some on me. Now we're off to make our sauce. In a medium saucepan, we have a tablespoon of oil and butter added over medium-high heat until the butter has stopped foaming. Next, taking our pheasant bones, which I kind of overcrowded the pan, had to remove some, but it took about 5 to 7 minutes to get really nice color on them. After removing the bones, we add 2 more leeks thinly sliced, followed by 2 shallots thinly sliced, aka the chef onion. We're going to caramelize these. Took me about 3 to 4 minutes. Now we incorporate a tablespoon of flour, cooking for 2 minutes, followed by what should be a 1/4 cup of port wine. I just used red, and we're going to now add our marinade mixture. Reduce everything by half, and the bones are going to go back in. A cup of dark chicken stock. I did add more because I knew this was going to cook much longer than Bourdain asked for, and I think we know it's become an obsession at this point, adding demi-glace to everything and anything because it just adds a level of savoriness that can't really be explained. I add our bouquet garni, which I've actually made in bulk and keep them frozen. That's why it's all wilted and weird looking. We're going to simmer this for 1 hour. Giving a peek at our pheasant roll and rotating it. The temperature's okay. The foie gras is melting a bit, but it's actually time to make pig heart for the first time. Another one of Bourdain's recipes, rather interesting in flavor and texture. Post pig heart, it has been 2 hours and our roulade has finished its poaching. I was not too crazy about this. That lovely fat we worked to get inside the roulade is leaking out. Holding my reservations, we remove this and allow it to cool for 1 hour. Next was one of the more satisfying parts of this whole operation, slipping this thing out of its casing. It has a pretty amazing shape to it due to that tension we created with the plastic wrap and the slow simmering. Now Bourdain calls for truffles because why not? This is already getting insanely luxurious. The only thing we're missing are flakes of gold. These were jarred, so we're going to chop 2 tablespoons worth. I know that's not going to yield the same amazing flavor as fresh truffles, but I figure they will suffice. A bonus with jarred, there is truffle juice, which Bourdain actually calls for. So I have a few sips and it's not too bad. I'm totally kidding. These are actually going in our sauce, which after 2 hours instead of 1, we strain with a little cheesecloth just to get every little bit out so we can make sure this is nice and velvety. Back onto our heat, we add what should be a half cup of truffle juice. We only have about a quarter cup here in addition with our truffles. Cooking for 2 minutes with a nice simmer. This is going to go off the heat to stay nice and warm. We are now ready for the moment of truth. With quite a few days of research and prep followed by many more dollars spent, it's time to sear up this roulade. Over medium-high heat, we add a tablespoon of avocado oil and butter to our cast iron skillet. Once the butter has stopped foaming, we add our roulade and let it hang out there, not touching it for about 3 to 4 minutes. Giving it a turn, I am beyond happy with the color we're obtaining here, and we make sure to sear every side, maintaining that color without taking it too far. Now everything's going well until I check the temperature. We are not even close. I'm looking for about 155. The highest we got was about 120 while sous videing. So I have to struggle here, not trying to burn it, and I end up putting this thing in the oven to cook it throughout. I was getting pretty stressed here. This was like a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of money, and now we might have this dry log of pheasant. But at 375, it actually came out pretty nice. We hit an internal temperature of 155 after about 10 to 15 minutes. It's time to take off the string and cut this bad boy into about 1/2-inch slices. Fortunately, the foie gras stayed intact. It didn't all melt. We finish our sauce with a tablespoon of butter to have a nice silky consistency, and it's time to plate this thing. Bourdain would have us drizzle the sauce around the pheasant. I figure we first put the sauce down and then have the pheasant nestle right on top. Finish this with a little French fleur de sel, which adds texture, taste, and lovely aesthetic, and it is time to dive into the most luxurious dish I have ever created. I'm happy to say the pheasant was pretty tender, probably due to all the elements being so fatty and rich, basting this in a sense. I have never tasted anything like this in my life. If I were given this in a restaurant, I would probably write a review about it. The pheasant, the veal, the foie gras, the truffles, every element stands on its own and can be distinguished, but still works in harmony. I don't have words for it. I'm getting way too philosophical here. I just have to give a cheers to Bourdain, to the book. Holy shit. If you're interested in seeing how that heart turned out, I have the video right here to your right. It's been a long day. It's been a long week. I can't even flip the Sharpie all fancy like. Thank you for spending your time with me. This was another episode of Back to Bourdain.
Stay organized and clean up after yourself. You do the best you can.